Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunday morning worship at the Sanctuary Church here in Austin. I'm Pastor Mike Robertson, and it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for choosing to spend some of your time with us this morning here together. as we worship and seek to learn a little bit more about God. I got nothing to announce, really. You already know what happens during the week. You know about our Wednesday night Zoom chat, and we still got room for you. We still have a seat ready just for you. If you want to join us on Wednesday nights, you should be receiving email with the link to that chat every Wednesday, if not Tuesday evening, and that will continue. So keep showing up for that. I always love that. I love seeing your faces, love hearing your voices, love getting to hear some of your stories and even your hopes and ambitions and dreams and goals. We share a lot. We learn a lot about each other. We grow closer together as a community, and that's what it is all about. It's a great day today, boy, beautiful weather. October is my favorite time of the year to live in Austin, Texas. It's just grand, and today's a beautiful, grand day. So I hope you have a chance to get outside. I'm not an outdoors guy, but today, even I don't mind going outside and walking around a bit. It's so pretty. So take advantage of it. But for now, let's get right into the message today, okay? Have you ever had this experience where you're sharing with somebody something that happened to you? An actual, true occurrence. A story that you actually experienced, and you tell it to them, and they say this: "Oh, you're crazy." They don't believe you. Has that ever happened to you? And the more you insist, no, that really happened. Yeah, right. And they go away thinking, you're crazy. You made that up. That couldn't be real. Well, I have a story like that. In my family, we've had a mystery going on for decades. It's not a mystery to me. Well, part of it's a mystery to me. Let me tell you the story, though. It happened when I was 13 years old, and I was living in the beautiful tourist city of Alice, Texas. There's not a lot to do in Alice, Texas. And when I was 13, what kids my age did, we went to the movies on Saturday afternoon at the Rialto Theater on Main Street. That theater was just torn down a few weeks ago. But I spent a lot of hours there, almost every Saturday afternoon. And when I was going to the movies back then in the 60s, you didn't call the theater and say, what time does the film start? You showed up whenever your parents dropped you off at the theater, and you stayed until whatever time they told you they'd be back to pick you up. It didn't matter if you walked in the beginning of the movie or 10 minutes before the end. You stayed through the end of the movie. You stayed through the previews and the cartoon, and then you watched it again, and sometimes you watched it yet again. When you arrived and when you left was not a big deal, just so long as you managed to see everything. So I went almost every Saturday afternoon. And on this particular Saturday, I'm sitting in the theater when something unprecedented happened. My mother comes walking down the aisle of the Rialto Theater. Now, that was odd because my mom just didn't go to the movies. I bet she hadn't been to a movie in years at that point, and I don't know if she would ever go to another one after that. She was just not a movie person. And so it was odd to see her in a theater, but she was coming down the aisle and she was looking back and forth. And I knew she was looking for me. And it struck terror into my heart because I figured either somebody had died or she had found out that I had done something wrong and couldn't wait till I get home to punish me for it. I didn't know what it was, but I didn't have a good feeling about it. And finally I said, Mom, what are you doing? She said, come on, come with me. So I jump out of my seat, scared witless. We go outside, we get in the car, she's driving home. She's obviously upset about something. And I said, what's happening? And she said, your brother has this idea. Now, my brother, Steve, was 4 years older than me. I was 13, so he was 17, almost 18 at that point. And here's what had happened. It was Saturday. My brother and I, we were total opposites. He was an athlete. He was the quarterback of the football team. He played other sports too. And I was the band geek. I was the one who was good in math and at music and poetry recitation and things like that. We did not see eye to eye on much of anything. But On this Saturday, he had been dating this girl for a while that lived in another town about 30 miles away. He calls her up and he says, do you want to go out Saturday night? She said, well, I'd love to, but I'm staying at a friend of mine's house. Do you think you could find a date for her? Now, my brother said, okay. And then he started calling his friends, his buddies. And one by one, they all said, no, I can't do it, or I don't want to do it, or I already have a date. He got turned down repeatedly. So many times that in desperation, he finally thought, I know one person I could take, my stupid little brother. And he had to be desperate because we were so different. He didn't want to spend time with me on a regular day, much less on a date. And I knew he was desperate. And so he pitched this idea to my mom. How about if I take Mike with me? And she wasn't keen on that idea either, because in our family, the rule was you date when you're 16 and not before. I'm 13. And he cajoled her. He talked to her. He said, come on, it's Saturday night. I want to go see this girl. And I can't go unless you let Mike go with me. And so finally she agreed. And she came to the theater and got me out of the theater so she could take me home and I could get ready for my big blind date. Now, never having been on a date, I didn't know what to do. I took a shower, I washed my hair, I splashed on some high karate or some brute, whatever was popular at the time. And I got in the car, and my brother and I drove off to this other town. And I remember a lot about that night, but one thing I do not remember, I have blocked it out, is the expression on that girl's face when she saw me, when she saw her date for the evening. I can't imagine what must have gone through her mind. Here's a 13-year-old child who's supposed to be her date. Oi. So we go out and get in the car. She and I are in the back seat. She's way over there, and I'm way over here, and I have no clue how to move from way over here to way over there, or even lessen the distance any. I don't know what to do. I'm not a good conversationalist. I don't know how to talk to girls. And so there's not a lot of chit-chat during the drive. We had decided we would go to a movie in a town that was kind of halfway in between Alice and the town where this girl lived, a town called Robstown. So we headed for the theater in Robstown, and the marquee said they were showing the Hank Williams story, Your Cheating Heart. And, excuse me, Your Cheating Heart, you wouldn't believe who starred as Hank Williams. It was George Hamilton. Yeah, George Hamilton, the actor that's still around, the guy that with the suntan. He was playing Hank Williams in this movie. So we go in, we watch the movie. I don't remember anything else. We took these girls home. I don't remember that at all. We went back home and literally did not speak of it again. So time passes. Maybe 30 years goes by. And it's a holiday, I don't know, Thanksgiving, Christmas, sometime when we were all together, the three kids in my family and our parents. And whenever we were together on holidays, we tended to get a little nostalgic and start telling stories. And on this particular occasion, again, 30 years after it happened, I said, hey, remember that time when you and I double dated? And we went to we picked up those two girls and we went to that movie in Robstown. And my entire family looks at me and says, you're crazy. That never happened. My brother says, that didn't happen. My mom says, that doesn't sound like something I would have done. My dad's just sitting there grinning because he doesn't remember anything anyway. My sister was only 5 at the time of this date. She doesn't have any recollection of it happening. And I said, no, we actually went to the movie in Robstown. We saw Your Cheating Heart with George Hamilton. Ding, no bells are being rung. They are just looking at me like I'm crazy. And they even start teasing me about it. Hey, remember, what about that mystery date? You're the only one that remembers it. What about that? I didn't let it go. Several years after that, I go back to South Texas for a school reunion. And while I'm down there, I go to the public library in Alice, and I start going through the microfilm files. And I find the ones for the Robstown paper, and I go back to the fall when I was 13 years old because I remembered it being in the fall, and I knew it was on a Saturday. So I'm looking through the Robstown paper every Saturday in the fall, and I come across this ad in the Robstown paper for your cheating heart. And I even know now the exact date that we went on this double date. So the next time I see my brother, I said, hey, look at this. I show him. I get it printed out. I get a printout of the newspaper page. And I said, here's the ad from the paper on the day we went on that double date. And he looks at the ad and he says, I never seen that movie. It happened. I know it happened. I remember a lot of it, but nobody believed me. Nobody else remembered it at all. And years went by, and after that, it was rare that we didn't get together and somebody would tease me about the mystery date. And I don't think anybody believed me. I'm not sure how my sister felt about it. But finally, my dad passed away. My mom passed away. Last year, my brother passed away. I'm the only one now who remembers that night. And it happened, but nobody else believes it. Now, I tell you that story because it reminds me of a kind of a cute story that's in the Bible. It's a woman whose story only takes up a few verses. You've probably never heard of her. She doesn't get a lot of attention. She's only mentioned this one time in the New Testament, but it's a very charming and amusing story, and I think there's something valuable to be learned from the little glimpse we get into her life. The young lady's name is Rhoda. She's a servant girl. She's a maid in the house of Mary. Not Jesus' mother, Mary, but Mary, the mother of John Mark. And her story is found in the book of Acts, chapter 12. Now, this is very early in the history of the church. Those first believers were seriously persecuted for believing in Jesus. Stephen had already been stoned to death, become the first Christian martyr. King Herod had started a campaign to just stamp out the followers of Jesus. He executed James, the brother of John. And then he arrested Peter, Simon Peter, the main guy. He arrested him during Passover week, during a Jewish holiday. And he put him in jail, and he put 16 men guarding him. The tightest security he could possibly come up with, including one guy chained to his left arm and one guy chained to his right arm. And Herod's intention was to wait till Passover was done. And once the holiday was over, he intended to have a kind of trumped up trial for Peter, following which Peter would be executed. So Peter was guarded so closely, literally, there was guys on every side of him. What could the other believers do? His friends, his fellow Christians, what could they do? All they could do was pray. And so they met at Mary's house and began to pray that Peter would somehow get out of jail. It's the night before he is to be tried and executed, and he lays in the prison cell chained to 2 Roman guards, and Luke tells us he was sleeping like a baby. Sleeping like a baby, but suddenly the cell is filled with light. The cell is filled with light, and an angel appears to Peter and shakes him and says, "Get up, quickly." And the shackles fall off of Peter's arms and his legs. And the guards continue to sleep. And the angel says, "Get up, get dressed, and follow me." And Peter's thinking, well, I must be dreaming. I must be having an incredible dream. But he obeyed. He gets up, gathers his clothes together, and he follows the angel. They walk right out of the cell. The door is open, past the other guards who are all asleep. They walk right out the front door of the jailhouse, and they walk to the city wall, and even the gate of the city is standing open. It's just an amazing story where he's waiting his execution, and this angel appears and says, "Come on, we're leaving. Get out of here. You're freed." I always like to look up what great painters have done with scenes from the Bible. And these pictures I've showed you, I thought were very nice, but there's a detail in them that I did not notice for a while, and I didn't really know about. In the first one, it's kind of dark. It's hard to see a little bit. But if you look at Peter's hand over here, there's a big key right there next to his hand. And in the second picture, where the angel is leading Peter out of the cell, in this hand, he's holding two keys. And I thought, well, if he's already got the keys, what does he need the angel for? He can just unlock the door. But I learned that this is a traditional sign that most artists added to pictures of this scene, because it refers back to a time when Jesus told Peter he was going to build his church, and Peter was going to be the foundation of that church. And Jesus said, "I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you lock up on earth, it'll be locked up in heaven. Whatever you free on earth, it will also be freed in heaven." I thought that was a neat little detail that these artists chose to put keys into the picture. Well, one block into the city, the angel disappears, and Peter stands there all alone. And it's dark, and there's no street lights. There's nothing except maybe whatever moon might have been available. And Peter thinks, where do I go? He realized then he was not dreaming. This was really happening. God has freed him from Herod's plot against his life. But where was he supposed to go now? Well, he decides, I'll go to Mary's house. I wonder if my friends are praying for me there. And he heads for Mary's house, where he knows the way very, very well, because Mary's house was a gathering place for early Christians. And he makes his way to Mary's house. And inside the house, the believers had just been praying all night long. It's an all-night prayer meeting, asking God to save Peter. And so Peter goes to the door, and he knocks on the door of Mary's house. Well, inside the house, beside all the believers, is the young girl named Rhoda, the servant, the maid. And because she's the maid, it is her duty to go down and respond when she hears somebody knocking on the door. So Rhoda hurries down the stairs, and she gets to the door of the courtyard and puts her ear up against the door and says, "Who is it?" And then she hears the voice that she recognizes very well. She's heard it many, many times. The voice that says, "It's Peter." He doesn't want to say it too loud because he's just gotten out of jail. He's escaped from jail. But he says, "It's Peter." The one that they have been praying for is standing outside the door. He's here. It was so exciting for Rhoda. It was so exciting that she raced back up the stairs to share the news without even opening the door, leaving poor Peter standing out in the cold, dark night with cops everywhere looking for him. She forgot he was out there, and she bursts upstairs and says, "It's Peter. Peter is here." And you know what they said to Rhoda? They said, "Oh, you're crazy. Don't be ridiculous. He's in a cell so deep and guarded by so many people, there's no way he could be out. You must be crazy." She said, "No, really, I recognized his voice." She was just bursting with excitement. And she pleads and insists, and some of the other people there say, "It's not Peter, it's probably just his guardian angel." Now, at this time, early Christians believed that each person had a designated angel to help guide them along life's path. I don't know if that's true or not. It would be nice to think that was the case. But why would a guardian angel stand outside knocking on the door? If an angel could appear inside a locked cell with 16 guards, it could certainly appear in Mary's living room upstairs. Why would it have to knock on the door? We don't know. That was not explained. But Peter is still outside knocking on the door, wondering what the holdup is. And finally, Rhoda keeps insisting, and they said, "Let's go downstairs just to shut her up." And they go downstairs and open the door. And it was true. There's their friend. There's their brother, Peter. He's really there. And Peter tells them the story of what's happened, how an angel has freed him from prison, and he just strolled right out the open door. And he says, make sure you tell the rest of the apostles, I have to go. And he leaves. That's the end of Rhoda's story. That's all we know about Rhoda right there. But even though it's very short, and we don't know a whole lot about her, I still think there's some lessons in Rhoda's story that are worth examining this morning. The first question that comes to mind is this: who's knocking at your door? What message is God trying to get to you? How often do we ignore the messages or the little bits of guidance that God is sending our way? I believe that God is always trying to speak to us. I believe that God leaves us messages in so many places, and most of them we ignore either consciously or unconsciously. Or maybe we tend to think today, well, God doesn't speak to people anymore like he did in the Bible. I don't believe that. God still wants to communicate with you, and he's going to do whatever means is necessary to get his message across to you. Who is trying to get your attention right now? What is the message God is sending you that you keep ignoring? Well, the next question that Rhoda's story brings to mind is this: are you really even expecting the answer? Isn't it ironic that all these Christians are upstairs and they've been praying all night long for Peter's deliverance? And then they're so skeptical and so surprised when Peter actually gets delivered from prison. What? What were they praying for? Do you pray with no expectation or no hope that God is going to answer your prayer? That's a waste of time. You see, faith is a crucial element of prayer. You need to believe that God is going to grant what you are seeking. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless for you to pray. It's just checking off a box that, did you pray about it? Yeah, I prayed about it. You expect it to happen? Nah, I don't know. Remember the story of the Roman centurion that came to Jesus one time, and he, as Jesus was traveling, and this Roman, not a Jew, not a follower of Jesus, Roman centurion officer comes to Jesus and says, my servant is very sick and is going to die. I ask you if you would heal my servant. And Jesus says, all right, take me to him. Let's go. And the centurion says, oh, we don't need to go. I know that if you want to, you can heal him from right here. Just a word from you is all it takes. And the New Testament says Jesus was astonished. And he said, I haven't seen faith in anyone in Israel among the chosen people. I haven't seen faith like this anywhere. And instantly, the servant is healed, long distance. Speaking of faith, you want to see great faith in this story. Look at Simon Peter, sleeping peacefully just a couple of hours before he's supposed to be executed. That is faith, my friends. Worry is the opposite of faith. It's the antithesis of faith. We need to believe in the power of prayer and to put faith that God is actually going to hear and respond to our prayer. Well, another lesson from Rhoda's story, and this is the one that strikes close to my heart because of the story I told you to start with. They might not believe you. When you have a spiritual experience, when you have something life-changing happen to you, don't automatically expect everyone to understand it or believe it happened. They may never understand it. They may never believe it. And you know what? It doesn't matter. You're not responsible for them believing it. What's important is that it has a genuine effect on your life. Again, there was a man who Jesus healed, a blind man, a man who'd been blind since birth, and Jesus healed him, and then Jesus kind of leaves the scene. And everybody who's known this man his entire life is going, he can see. He can see. And the religious leaders pull him in and begin to question him because they think something fishy is going on. They said, who was this that did this? The man said, I don't know. I've never encountered him before. And they said, what does he look like? How did he do it? The man said, I don't know anything about him. And they keep pressing him and pressing him and pressing him. And finally he says, here's all I know. I used to be blind, and now I can see. I used to be blind, but now I can see. If you don't want to believe that, that's your prerogative, but it happened to me. Then another lesson from Rhoda's story. It doesn't matter how good your prayer meeting is if you don't open the door. Those people upstairs could have kept praying for hours and hours and hours, and they could have left the next day feeling really good about how much time we spent in prayer. Wow, I've never prayed so hard in my life. And they would have missed the blessing. They would have missed the miracle. How often do we treat our church as a fortress where we can go hide out and reflect on what good followers of Jesus we are? Here we are, nice and safe in our little sanctuary, safe from the outside world. And meanwhile, there are people outside these walls who would desperately love to be welcomed in anywhere. We can shield ourselves from all that, or we can open the door and experience the blessing. See, the last thing we ever want to do is to close ourselves off from the blessing. When we close the door, we don't just hurt the people who are outside knocking. We deprive ourselves of the gift that God wants to give us. But keep in mind, the miracle didn't happen in that room full of praying people upstairs. It happened outside the door. It happened at the place of need. Don't close yourself off. Well, my friends, regardless of whatever the situation might be, God is in control. And if we ask God in faith, He will answer in power. That's my story. Knock on wood. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us today.